Yo, what is up guys? A few weeks ago, I replaced the chain and sprockets on my Ninja 400. I got there in the end, but it didn't exactly go to plan. And it got me thinking, should you be working on your own motorbikes with no prior mechanical qualifications or experience? I'm not one of those blokes who'll sit here mumbling about how you have to know how to work on your bikes in order to ride them. If you have the money or the means to get someone else to do your dirty work for you every time you want to lubricate your chain and you have no interest in doing it yourself or learning about it, then by all means, go ahead. As long as you're getting it done when it's required, I'm not hating. If the only thing incentivizing you to work on your own bike is the vitriol and judgment of strangers on the internet, then I don't think it's for you. In short, the answer is yes, you should definitely give it a crack, but only if it's something you're interested in doing, because there are some pretty strong barriers of entry when it comes to working on your own bike. Starting with cost. Many people think it's cheaper to work on their own bikes because the labor cost is removed from the equation. For basic maintenance, this is absolutely correct. Chain maintenance, oil and oil filter replacements, air filters, spark plugs, these kind of jobs can be done with a rudimentary toolkit and some help from YouTube. It's when you start moving to those bigger jobs that tools start to become expensive. When you're starting with nothing, this stacks up real fast, especially if you're buying quality tools, which in my opinion is a must. I first started with a cheap as socket set, which stripped bolts and cracked sockets. I soon had to replace it with a decent set, which I should have just bought in the first place. And then there are those jobs which require specialist tools which you may only end up using a few times throughout your home mechanic journey. In my endeavor to get my chain and sprockets replaced, I had to invest in a chain breaker tool. It's specifically for replacing chains, and to be honest, I don't think I'll use it very often at all. If I had just taken my bike to the mechanics, this isn't a cost that I would have even had to think about. Then there's that gap in knowledge and experience, which can lead to extra costs that you don't anticipate. I made some pretty bad mistakes during my chain and sprocket replacement job, and I'm gonna tell on myself here. Firstly, I broke the master link. You can go watch my other video to find out exactly why that happened, but I had to go buy another one. I also didn't want to break my chain, so I had to loosen my swing arm nut to get it off. In my haste to reassemble the bike, I forgot to tighten this nut back down to spec, and a week later it ended up falling off. Now thankfully, these parts were fairly cheap, but they were not convenient nor were they timely, which leads me to my next point. When you pay a mechanic for their labor, you're not just paying them for their time, but their experience and their knowledge too. When you decide to DIY it as a fresh-faced home mechanic, you save on the labor cost, but you also miss out on the knowledge and experience that a seasoned mechanic would have. A job that would have taken a mechanic an hour or two to complete ended up taking me many days because I had no clue what I was doing aside from a few guides on the internet. When I broke the master link, I had to leave my bike where it was. I then had to go out the next day, source one, come back and have another crack at fixing up the chain. I had to do this while juggling work and extracurriculars. And that nut that fell off, I spent so long trying to hunt one of those down. I ordered one from Kawasaki, but the wait time was 4 weeks. I had 2 days until I had to race around Broadford for my first track day. And there was no way in hell I was going to take the Ninja 400 out on a track when it was missing a swing arm nut. After making multiple trips out, I found out the hard way that hardware stores use a different thread pitch to automotive fasteners. Eventually, I had to travel all the way to a specialist fastener store just to get this nut. So yes, the master link and the nut were relatively cheap, but were they really, considering the time and effort I had to sacrifice to go source them? Not to mention the extra time I had to put into fixing my own mistakes. The knowledge and the experience that my mechanic has would have saved me all this hassle, stress, and time. Last, but by no means least, safety. I dropped my bike off at the shop for some fresh rubber before my track day. I got a call, expecting it to be my mechanic telling me that the Ninja was ready to be picked up. He goes, "Mate, who did your chain and sprocket replacement?" If you've ever worked on your own vehicle, you can probably understand just how stupid I felt when I heard him drop that line. He discovered that my swing arm nut was missing. I had done a visual check after I'd put the bike back together and I knew it was there. I actually have a photo from a week later that proves the swing arm nut was still on the bike. I had forgotten to torque it down to spec, and to be honest, if my mechanic hadn't noticed that it was missing, I don't know how long I would have been riding around for with no swing arm nut. There is a chance I could have been at Broadford thrashing my bike around a track with no swing arm nut, which is crazy considering the swing arm nut and bolt is the only thing holding your swing arm to your bike. So yeah, this was a pretty critical safety concern that could have been completely avoided had I just taken it to a mechanic. Now, I'm not saying that every mechanic is perfect, but there is a high chance that a qualified mechanic who does the job right will get it done on time and with as few safety concerns as possible. So a mechanic is probably going to be cheaper, faster, and safer in the short term. Why then would anyone in their right minds want to work on their own bike? Well, if we look at that upfront cost brought on by the requirement for good quality tools, you start to realize that if you collect them over time and actually use them, they're a decent investment. There are also innovative ways to get a job done in a very cost-effective manner. I'm sure plenty of home mechanics out there started their journey not out of love, but out of necessity because they couldn't afford to take it to a mechanic. In terms of paying a mechanic for their labor, yes, we're saving some time and maybe some stress, but ultimately we'd be foregoing the opportunity to learn and gain this experience for ourselves. The more we do this, the better we get. I made some tremendous mistakes, but I learned from them. Not just stuff that's specific to a chain and sprocket job, but about my mechanical process and how to improve it as well. Because I made these mistakes, I now know how to avoid them. And the next time I do a chain and sprocket job, it is going to be so much quicker and so much easier. In terms of safety, yeah, I'm not going to debate this one. I genuinely think that taking it to a mechanic is going to result in the safest outcome for everyone. The cost, the acquisition of experience and knowledge, the safety factor. These are all extremely important aspects of my journey, but the real kicker lies in the fulfillment and the satisfaction. There is no greater feeling than successfully carrying out a modification or a large piece of maintenance on my own bike, being able to hop on it and experience these changes knowing that I've done them myself. Sometimes I'll get halfway through a job and ask myself why I put myself through this torture, but I eventually get the job done and my question is answered for me. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I will catch you on the next one.
You say you got them guns, but I've never seen you bang. You say you got them drugs, but I've never seen you slang.